Writing Matters with Dr. Troy Hicks is a Writable podcast. Find more episodes and subscribe on your favorite platforms. And if you want to learn how to grow great writers, check out writable.com. In this episode, Troy speaks with Carol Jago, an English teacher of 32 years, celebrated author, associate director of the California Reading and Literature Project at UCLA, and former president of the National Council of Teachers of English. I found their conversation really inspiring. I hope you do too.
Welcome to the next episode of our podcast series. Today we are speaking with an English teacher extraordinaire, Carol Jago, who I have a great deal of admiration for all the work that you've done inside and outside the classroom. How are you today?
I'm great, Troy. Happy to be here.
Great. Thanks so much. So for those of us who may not be familiar with your work, can you give us a quick picture of where you're at in your career as an educator and kind of what day-to-day life looks like for you right now?
After 32 years teaching middle and high school students, largely teaching them about writing, I now, after serving as president of the National Council of Teachers of English, now I travel around the country working with teachers. I also do a whole lot of writing because anymore that's what is needed. That's what people are looking for. They want more avenues to think about their own professional growth.
Yes, and you are definitely the model of a teacher writer that many of us can aspire to. So as you know, we could talk for quite a long time kind of about philosophy and pedagogy and all the theory about teaching writing, but let's just get right to it. So as you think about a go-to strategy, as you think about something that works really well with your students in your classroom, what is it? What is the strategy that you are finding to be most compelling right now?
The instructional move that I believe is most essential for students is to help them begin to be able to evaluate their own writing so that they're less dependent upon me. And one way I've done this, and again, remember all my teaching was in California where class size is 36, 37, 42. So I would have students with their own drafts on their desks and walk them through things to look for in their own writing. I said, everybody take a look at your first sentence. Does it compel a reader's interest? No? Then just write in the margin there, need a better first sentence. Things like this, trying to help them develop those habits of mind that a writer brings to their own work. If my teaching results in 36 young writers depending on me, let alone the next 36 that are going to come in next period, I haven't done my job. And unfortunately, I think a lot of our practices as teachers, all the red pen work, all the correcting that we do of student papers actually encourages students to think that way. I've had so many kids just hand me a paper, say, Ms. Jago, just show me what to do and I'll fix it. Well, that's not our goal, really.
Yeah, so that is really interesting. So you would walk them through the process of interrogating these texts and thinking about what makes a good move as a writer so they could see it in their classmates' writing, but then also think about how to internalize that and use it in their own writing.
Yes, very simple things like telling them to put a slash mark every place there's end punctuation, and then just to eyeball their page or their screen to say, are all the sentences three words long? Are all the sentences 6 lines long? You need more sentence variety. See, I'm always trying to let them make those decisions about their own writing instead of my making those decisions for them.
That's wonderful. And so I can definitely see how that would work on paper. And I'm just curious, did you have any technology tips or ways that you might have them do that with, say, Word document or Google Docs? Would they use highlighting or line breaks or anything along those lines to do those kinds of revision moves?
word processing changed the whole nature of what it means to be a writer. And I think that helping students embrace that instead of taking the very same mindset that they brought to, I don't want to change this because then I got to copy the whole thing over. Sometimes there's students who actually feel the same way about something, that they can just cut and paste, save that for later, and just again walking them through. Is there a paragraph that just doesn't fit, but you really like it? Okay, just cut and paste it and put it over here. So again, just very informal ways of showing them how flexible a word processing system is for writing.
Fantastic. So building off those wonderful strategies, then how would you go about the process of providing feedback to your students? And it sounds like you had a very feedback rich experience for them, giving comments to one another. What would you do as a teacher in order to provide feedback to your students, and what would you focus on?
The very best way to offer feedback is face-to-face, eyeball to eyeball. And I know how hard that can be to schedule in a classroom with many students. But if we just do the math of how many minutes you could spend at home on a student paper, marking it, writing on that paper, versus spending even 5 minutes with a student in a side by side, it's much more powerful, because sometimes what students really need is to talk about their own paper. So I also want to be clear, a writing conference is, all the gurus of writing conferences will tell you, isn't about my telling the student what to do, but about providing an opportunity for the student to reflect on their own writing. And I've had this happen in my own experience. Nothing I write ever goes public and goes anywhere without my husband seeing it. And sometimes I'll ask him I'll email him something that I've written, and I can see this quizzical look on his face, and he'll say to me, Carol, before I do anything here, tell me what you're trying to say. And that's what I mean when I talk about sitting down with students and giving them feedback that can really help them help themselves as writers.
That's fantastic. So do you have a particular question or at least a line of questions that you might approach a student to begin that conversation, to open up the conference and be able to get to the heart of that feedback process? Is there a way that you like to approach students in the conference, I guess is a way I would phrase that? In the same way that many of us learned when writing on student papers, writing comments, to start out with something positive, I think the same is true in a writing conference. That you start out either pointing out or asking a student, what do you really like about this piece? What's an aspect of it? Where's an area that you think accomplished what it is you wanted to accomplish? Because that builds rapport, builds a connection, and also sends the message that you can do this. I believe one of the things that holds students back as writers is their belief that it's too hard. I also don't think we accomplish much when we just get out there and go, reading is fun, writing is fun. Because honestly, I don't think writing is fun. I've written 14 books. I don't think it's fun. I'd rather do anything else. I'd rather go to the dentist than sit down and write. But I love having written. And I do believe that writing is power, that it's essential, that just the way we wouldn't not teach some students how to swim. We need to teach all students how to write. It's unsafe not to be able to write. That's very powerful. And I would agree too. Writing is hard, but getting the writing done, much like exercise or anything else, we always feel better when we're done with it. So you've already given us a little bit of a glimpse into this kind of scaffolding and strategy that you provide for students to respond to one another's writing. Do you have other suggestions about how to help get students to be more thoughtful or more productive in that feedback process? Are there ways that you would get students to do that and fully engage, to provide that genuine kind of feedback rather than just the, yeah, I like it and let's move on? Are there other tips or strategies you might have?
Nobody has made up more peer editing worksheets than I have in my life. File cabinets full of them. And they just kept getting longer and longer, and they still didn't accomplish what I hoped to accomplish. And so how I evolved, it was to, before students in any way, whether it's electronically or pieces of paper, exchange papers, the writer has to ask a question. The writer has to give that peer some direction. I'm looking for this, I need that, help me, this section sucks, you know, some direction, because otherwise it's futile. The other thing that I think was an epiphany for me was recognizing the extent to which the benefit is on both sides. That students who learn how to respond to someone else's writing are actually becoming better writers themselves. I saw this, you know, working, I was yearbook editor for 26 years. And those students who were the very best in providing feedback were also the best writers. And it cements, it strengthens, it fortifies their own understanding of what makes good writing. So it's not just, I have to do this for somebody else, and it's kind of an altruistic investment of a student's time, but it really is going to help them be better writers themselves.
That's wonderful to hear. And I really appreciate this thread of inquiry that moves back and forth between the teaching, the conferencing, teaching students how to provide feedback to one another. That's wonderful.
Well, you know, Troy, learning how to write isn't a one and done thing. There's no point at which now I know how to write. It is possible for anybody, for however long they've been written, to write really, really badly. And so it is an ongoing journey that we're on. And that too, I think, is something that we don't realize how we don't teach students that. We create Annie A student and she knows how to do this and most of you don't. And that really, I mean, to go back to your example of exercising, you stop exercising and you lose some of what you had gained. The same thing is true in writing, that those writing muscles can just grow slack.
Mm. Yes, absolutely. So let's think then about how you as a writer keep those muscles strong. What are the things that fuel you? Knowing that writing is hard, but knowing that it's great when it's done. Can you think of a word or a phrase or just an idea or a mantra that helps move you forward as a writer?
Last year, 1 year ago, I was so frustrated because as I traveled around the country, all I kept seeing were teachers wringing their hands over students today. All they want to do is play Fortnite. They're on their phone and they're not reading anymore. And so I felt absolutely a sense of urgency that I needed to write this book about, you know, the book in question, why and how reading is in crisis, in order to talk about, there's a lot we can do as teachers. And so I think that having a reason to write, having a purpose to write, having a sense of urgency. I wrote that book in maybe 6 weeks, eight weeks, because I had so much to say, and I wanted to say it right now for this audience. And I think that that's what propels writers best, is a reason to write.
Absolutely. And so as you think about what you do and what your day-to-day work looks like right now, how do you keep this, well, I wanted to say propulsion, for lack of a better term, or this motivation? What happens for you on a day-to-day basis that helps keep you moving forward and helps you in your work with other teachers?
I think that staying involved in the teacher community, just listening to people, professional development isn't, so now I provide a lot of professional development, but that doesn't mean I'm not still learning and reading books and having other folks like yourself, steer me in a new direction. And that feels good. I don't think I don't think teaching writing is perfectible. I think that as every day there are new challenges. We have students writing on their phones. I could no more do that. I can't even see that well. But we need to think about this. I think about Marianne Wolf's new book, Reader Come Home, and how she talks about students having a biliterate reading brain, that they can are fully competent and confident in the digital world, and at the same time have that ability to slow down, to reflect, to do the deep reading. And I would argue, to be able to write, you need to slow down in order to think through what it is you have to say in writing. And it's not either or, it's and both.
Yes. And I wonder if I might follow up with you. You, of course, mentioned the National Council of Teachers of English, NCTE, as one way to stay connected. Are there other online communities or face-to-face real-world communities, I guess, for lack of a better term, that you are connected with that help fuel you and contribute to your own professional development as well?
I wouldn't be who I am as a teacher, as a writer, as a person without the National Writing Project. And so, I really think that at the base, that they really have it right, that we need to return to that feeling of being a writer in order to be better teachers of writing. I also participate a whole lot in Twitter, because somehow it gives me an amazing scan of the professional landscape. Today, all kinds of things happen, and sometimes those things make me mad, sometimes those things make me excited, and that provides fuel for the next blog post I might write, or something that I feel that maybe the next book I have to write.
That's wonderful. Well, as always, I certainly appreciate your time and your contributions to the field. Thank you for spending time with us today, Carol.
Oh, thanks for all you do in this world, Troy. You're really making the difference.
Writing Matters with Dr. Troy Hicks is a Writable podcast. Discover more episodes and subscribe on your favorite streaming platforms. Or check out filmed episodes on YouTube. Writable offers more than 600 writing prompts and assignments, with a range of feedback and assessment tools to help you build more purposeful, proficient writers. Learn more at writable.com.